Let's get into some of the technical terminology you're going to encounter throughout this course and in your work as an AI PM. You can find the PDF with all these definitions attached below. First, an LLM. A large language model is a type of AI model trained on a massive amount of text that takes in text input and predicts the most likely next words to generate a coherent response. This is the technology that, with the release of GPT-3, marked the beginning of the AI tech race. Examples of LLMs are ChatGPT, Claude, and Grok. The next term is provider. On Latitude, and more generally, a provider is your configured connection to a specific AI company providing access to LLM models, like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, or even a custom or self-hosted one. An example of this is that you have your provider being OpenAI, offering the model GPT-5. The next term is prompt. The prompt is the input to the LLM that would be run through the LLM to become the response or output. An example of a prompt would be, write a funny LinkedIn post about quitting my job to become a professional ping pong player. The next term is prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is the practice of crafting, testing, and refining prompts to get the desired output from the LLM. For example, instead of writing, write a story, you write, you are a professional sci-fi ghostwriter, write a 300-word sci-fi story in the style of some sci-fi author. The next term is reliability. Reliability is the measure of how often your AI feature works exactly as intended. The next term is hallucination. Hallucination is when a model confidently makes up output that is completely untrue. For example, if a model says the Eiffel Tower was built in 1992 by Apple, that would be a hallucination. The next terms are deterministic and probabilistic. Deterministic means that the same input is always giving the same output. This is what traditional software does. Probabilistic refers to one input giving slightly different outputs each time. This is how most LLMs work, and this is often mediated by the temperature value. Now, temperature is a numeric parameter from 0 to 2 that controls how random or creative the model is. A low temperature would be more deterministic, and a high temperature would be more creative, or more probabilistic. So think that if you're working on some mathematical type of problem, you might want your temperature to be lower, to be 0.1 or 0.2. But if you're having an LLM write poetry, you might want it at 1 or 0.8 or 1, around there. So the next term, or really concept, are tokens. Now this is a little bit hard to grasp in the beginning, but it's incredibly important. Tokens are small chunks of meaningful information that are roughly 3 to 4 letters or parts of a word that LLMs use to process text. Everything, cost, speed, and limits is measured in tokens. So to give you guys an example, the sentence, "this is a tokenizer," is actually 6 tokens according to OpenAI's GPT-4o tokenizer. Now moving on from tokens, we have a context window. A context window is the maximum amount of text measured in tokens that can be sent as input to the model. For example, GPT-4o has a 128,000 token context. That's enough to read an entire novel in one prompt. Next, we have the term AI agent. Now, this is quite a big concept, and we're going to be dedicating a future video to this, but simply, an AI agent is an architecture where an LLM is able to call itself in loops. We often use these to be able to think or to call tools. These are actually external to the LLM model itself. So, a bit connected to AI agents is the concept of tools. Now, tools are external functions that are available to be used by the LLM agent. An example of this is an AI checking the weather on the internet before responding to a query like, "What's the weather today?" The next term is bias. Bias is when the training data or model design causes systematically skewed or unfair outputs. For example, if you have an AI loan eligibility model that consistently assigns lower creditworthiness scores to applicants from certain neighborhoods, even when their financial profiles are similar to others, that would be an example of a bias that you would have to correct for in your training or in your prompting. The next term is latency. Latency is how long it takes from sending a prompt to getting the response. This is incredibly important for making real-time features and also measuring the quality of your model. Finally, we have the concept of RAG. RAG is a process where the model pulls up real, up-to-date information from a database or documents before answering. An example of this is, instead of guessing your company's Q3 revenue, you would have the AI go and search the internal docs and then find that information and then report it. So don't worry if you were a little overwhelmed by all the theoretical information that we've just introduced. This is actually all going to become second nature with a bit of practice, which we're going to get into right in the next lessons.